Namaste everyone. Welcome to this seminar series from Indic Studies Toronto. Yeah, this is one of the various webinars we have been conducting since this summer. And today the topic is Eternal Ayodhya, and our speaker is Srimati Anuradha Goyalji. She is an avid travel blogger, and she has extensively traveled in India and abroad and visited all our ancient heritage mandirs. She also runs a YouTube channel and called Indie Tales, which gives us a lot of information about our heritage, and I have managed to get all this information. Also, she has reintroduced Goa as a Vedic city and not a city of beaches only. So that is also very interesting thing about her blog. So we are looking forward to hear about her from about Ayodhya, especially the Vedic, the eternal Ayodhya or Ayodhya in history. So welcome, Anuradha ji. Please continue.
Namaste, or should we say Jai Siya Ram today? Thank you very much for inviting me to this conversation and allowing me to talk about Ayodhya. I'm going to quickly walk you through what I do and why I'm here talking about this. I run this travel blog called Indie Tales, which is there in Hindi as well as English. And I run a book reviews blog, which is India's biggest book reviews blog. I curated a Yatra conference, and this year I've started a podcast which is called Detours with Anuradha Goyal in English and Idhar Udhar in Hindi. Some of the stats that we've done, and of course we have the whole ecosystem around the YouTube channel, social media channels, and we talk primarily about travel. Although we talk about travel across the world, but we focus a lot on India and a lot on ancient Indian cities and heritage. This is my earlier book, which came about 6 years ago, which is a business book. Another set of books we released, which I will talk about towards the end of the talk. And another book should be out hopefully by end of next month, and we'll talk about it then. The reason I am here is that I visited Ayodhya 3 times, and once I spent a week there to study Ayodhya. And before I spent time in Ayodhya, I have read, there are a lot of sources in our literature that talk about Ayodhya, but these are the 3 primary sources that I have used to study Ayodhya. One is Ramcharitmanas by Goswami Tulsidas ji. As we know that we have 2 main epics, Mahabharata and Ramayana. And Ramayana is based in Ayodhya. This is where it starts, this is where it ends, though the story travels from Ayodhya to Janakpur, which is in the foothills of Himalayas, for the wedding of Ram and Sita. And then it travels down to Sri Lanka for the 14-year exile period of Ram, Lakshman and Sita. And we meet the characters like Hanuman, Sugriv, Ravan, and we see all these places associated with them. But the base of the story of Ramayana is Ayodhya. So Ramcharitmanas is one big source of information on Ayodhya. The second source is in the Skanda Puran. Skanda Puran is one of the biggest Purans we have, but it has various khands. So in the Vaishnav Khand, there is a section called Ayodhya Mahatmya, and it talks in detail about each and every place in the Ayodhya, which it defines as a big Tirth Sthal. It is as big as Kashi, it's as big as Prayag or Haridwar or Pushkar or any of these places. And so it's defined in detail in the Ayodhya Mahatmya. The third source that I have is the Kalidas's Mahakavya, Raghuvansham, where he has described the lineage of the kings who have ruled from Ayodhya. So he has chosen to call it Raghuvansh, Raghu being one of the kings in that lineage, and he's named his magnum opus on Raghu. But it talks about the lineage of, it starts with Dilip, it goes to Aj, it goes to Raghu, it goes to Sri Ram, and then of course his son Lav and Kush. So there is a whole lineage that it traces, and all of them are based in Ayodhya. So these are my three literary sources that I have taken a lot of information from. Then, of course, most of what I'm going to talk today comes from my personal experience of walking in the lanes of Ayodhya. In the photograph on the left, you see me walking in the streets of Ayodhya. On the right is the logo of a project called Global Encyclopedia of the Ramayana. It is a global project that has been launched by Ayodhya Shodh Sansthan, of which I'm a part, where we are going to document every possible thing associated with Ram, Ramayana or Ayodhya around the world, which includes temples, sculptures, paintings, storytelling traditions, dance dramas, music, anything and everything that is to be done will be a part of this project. This is a mega project. So a lot of my experiences come from having traveled to Ayodhya, having spent a lot of time in the streets of Ayodhya, and from being a part of this project. Now, with that background in place, if I can ask some of you, if you can tell me in the chat window, what do you know about Ayodhya? If you can tell me in chat window, what do you know about Ayodhya, apart from the fact that this is the birthplace of Sri Ram and this is the place where he ruled from. So very ancient, yes. It's also a Buddhist site, yes. It's the capital of Kaushal Pradesh, yes. All right. On the banks of river Saryu, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so I'll move on to define what is Ayodhya Puri. So the word Ayodhya comes from the combination of three letters, which is in Hindi we would call it Akar, Yakar, Dhakar. And these three letters stand from Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh. So Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. So this city belongs to all three of them. That is how the word Ayodhya is formed, but it also means the place that has never been won over, Ayodhya, the one which has never been won over. There are a lot of names that are mentioned in our Puranas for Ayodhya. Some of them are Saket. Saket is typically something that we associate with the Buddhist time. But we really don't know if it is the same Ayodhya or Saket was located close to Ayodhya. But Chinese travelers like Huan San have mentioned Saket, and they have mentioned a lot of Buddhist stupas here. Then it's called Vishnu Priya. The reason is obvious, because it is dear to Vishnu. This is where he chose to take one of his avatars, one of his key avatars as Sri Ram. So it is a place which is dear to Vishnu. It's also called Adipuri. Adipuri means the first city. So now you could say the first city is Kashi or Ayodhya, we don't know. But they say it's the first city of Vishnu. It's the first city which was ever set up. So it is also called Adipuri. It's called Kaushala because, like you said, it was the capital of the Kaushala Janpad. So in India, we had 16 Mahajanpads, or the 16 main divisions of the land, of which Kaushal was one of them, and it was the capital of Kaushal. It's called Kaushala Puri. Puri essentially means a city. So Kaushala Puri, because Sri Ram lived here, it's called Rampuri as well. It's called Padmapuri as well, because Padma is again one of the symbols of Vishnu. It's called Punya Lakshana. Punya Lakshana means one with auspicious signs, and we'll see some of them as we go ahead. It's also called Nandini because of the association of a story of the Nandini cow. This city is in the shape of a fish. So it's also called Matsyakar. So because of the fish shape. So the bulge of fish that you see is around the Saryu River, and the wings are Guptar Ghat and another Teerthsthal. And so this is defined as a Matsya Akar city, which means the city in the shape of a fish. And incidentally, fish was also, or twin fishes were also the royal symbol of the Solar dynasty. And we still, when you visit Ayodhya, you will see it engraved almost everywhere. And it continues to be the symbol of the Uttar Pradesh government. Okay, so it is also defined in the shape of a dhanush or a bow. So if you take the half of the fish, it also becomes a dhanu shape. In fact, city of Delhi and city of Ayodhya both are defined in the shape of bow as well. But in the Skand Puran, it is defined in the shape of a fish. So Ayodhya Pati. So any city is usually known by, most ancient cities are usually known by the kings who have ruled them, or the way they have ruled the kings, or the big projects they have done, or the big conquests they have done, or the big things they have done. So Ayodhya Pati, let's look at some of the kings of Ayodhya. So tell me, what are the other kings of Ayodhya you know, apart from these kings? We know these, we know Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, Shatrughan, and their father Dashrath, and his son Lav and Kush. Ikshvaku, Dilipa, Harishchandra, right? Bhagirath, yes. These are some of the kings. So Ikshvaku would be the first king of Ayodhya. The story goes that when the humanity was created, Manu and Satrupa, they performed a lot of tapasya in Naimisharanya, which is not far from Ayodhya, which is about 90 to 100 kilometers from Ayodhya, and they performed intense tapasya, and then they gave birth to sons, and one of their sons was Ikshvaku, and from Ikshvaku started the Solar dynasty. So Ikshvaku, that's why it's also called Ikshvaku Vansh. But the most popular king of the Solar dynasty, apart from Sri Ram, would be Raghu. That's why it gets the name Raghukul. Sri Ram is also called Raghukul Nayak or Raghav, or a lot of idioms, like a lot of dohas like Raghukul Reet Sada Chali Ai Pran Jaye Par Rachan Na Jai. Lot of them trace their roots to the time of Raghu. So Raghu would be great grandfather of Sri Ram. Ram's father is Dashrath, Dashrath's father is Aj, Aj's father is Dilip, and Dilip's father is Raghu. Let me tell you about one such place which is described in detail in the Skand Puran. Now, Skand Puran says Raghukul Bhushan, right? So one of the Tirth places mentioned in Ayodhya is a place called Swarnakhani. Now, Swarnakhani is a place. Swarnakhani literally means the gold mine. The place, it is said that this is a place where Kuber did the rain of gold. Swarna ki varsha hui thi. So there was a rain of gold that happened here because of Raghu. And the story goes like this, that Raghu went on a Digvijay Yatra. So he won over the whole of earth. He came back victorious to Ayodhya after winning the whole of earth. So he was the Mahipati, the king of the whole earth. He came back and he wanted to do a yagna to celebrate his win, and also to hand over whatever he has earned to all the rishis. So he called all the rishis who were stationed in all different Tirth Sthalas across India. He called all of them to Ayodhya. He performed an elaborate yagna, and he gave away everything that he had earned from all over the earth to them, to the extent that he was just left with his personal belongings, bare minimum personal belongings. Now, it so happened that one of the Munis, Kotsa Muni, walked in to Ayodhya just as he had finished giving away everything he had. Now, Kotsa Muni came, and Raghu, when he was welcoming him, he had a pot of clay in his hand when he washed the feet of Kotsumuni. Now, looking at the clay pot, Kotsumuni understood that he has given away everything and he will not get anything from Raghu. And he had come with an intention to ask him 14 crore gold coins. That's what he needed. And he thought Raghu is the only king who can afford to give me this. And when he saw that Raghu is holding a clay pot instead of a gold pot, he lost his hope. But he very politely said, I will go to another king and ask for it. Raghu said, wait, give me a day and I will try to arrange your gold coins. He thought for a few minutes and then he said, okay, I'm going to attack Kuber and then get the required money for him. So when he started walking towards Kuber's kingdom, Kuber was so scared of him that he made the gold rain in his kingdom in Ayodhya. And that's how that place came to be known as Swarnakhani. Now, the interesting part is that the gold that the Kuber gave was far more than the gold needed by Kotsumuni. So Raghu tells Kotsumuni that please take all of this because I have earned this only for you. Kotsumuni says, no, my requirement is 14 crores, which I have to give to my Guru Vishwamitra, and I will leave the rest to you. And Raghu takes all that and distributes it in all the other sages who were present there. So Raghu is known as one of the biggest donors. So if he needed, he could attack or he could wage war on somebody like Kuber, but when he had everything, he would give it away. We of course know the story of Harish Chandra. He's always quoted as Danveer Harish Chandra, or somebody who is very, very generous with donations. We always call him Harish Chandra. So we all know that, but not many people know that he was also the king of Ayodhya, though when he had to sell himself or when he had to sell his wife and his child, he went to Kashi, he went to Banaras and he sold himself. Which also tells us that probably Banaras was a center of trade more than Ayodhya was. Ayodhya was probably like a political capital. So Raja Dilip, who was Aja's father, he is known for his Gau Puja, for his cow worship. He was somebody, he and his wife, I think Sunaina was her name, they did not have a child, and when they wanted to have a child, they went and lived in an ashram, in a Vasishtha Muni's ashram, and they did the Gau Seva for a long time before they were blessed with a child. But they did not ask the cows to come to their palace so that they can fulfill a ritual. They decided to go and serve the cows where they were. Similarly, Aj is known for his Digvijay, for winning over all the earth. Bhagirath, we all know that he's responsible for getting Ganga on earth. A lot of people also interpret as somebody who excavated Ganga and he created the river Ganga, which again led to the creation of this whole plains of the flood these plains which were fed by Ganga. We know Mandhata as again one of the illustrious king. Kakuts is another very interesting king who has happened in this dynasty. He was probably the grandson of Ikshvaku. Now his name was something else. I think Puranjay was his name, and he as it happens that there was a war between the Asuras and the Devas, and Devatas lost the war, and then they came to Ayodhya and Asik, and they sought help from the kings of Ayodhya. And at that time, Kakuts said, I will come, and Puranjay said, I will come and help you out, but Indra will have to become my vehicle. And Indra took the form of a bull on which Puranjay sat and won the war for them. And so he got the name Kakuts, which means sitting on a hump. Another interesting king who happened was Raja Ghosh. He is somebody who's known for sun worship. Even today, there is a pond named after him. It's called Ghoshark Kund, and he was known for the sun worship that he did. So, to the Tirth Sthalas in Ayodhya. Tirth Sthalas. So, the biggest Tirth Sthal in Ayodhya is Saryu. All these pictures have been taken by me during my travels. So Saryu is a river which comes from Lake Mansarovar. I mean, if you've heard of Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, the same Lake Mansarovar is the origin of Saryu River. It comes via the Kumaon Hills in Uttarakhand. It comes down, and after Ayodhya, after a while, it actually merges with Ganga. So it becomes Ganga after Ayodhya, I think 60, 70 miles or something, it becomes Ganga. It is also a place where it takes a slight northward turn. That is where Ayodhya is located. Skand Puran gives a very, very clear definition of where Ayodhya is. I remember recently there was talks about where is Ayodhya. Some people claim it to be in Thailand, some people claim it to be somewhere else. Somebody recently claimed it to be in Nepal. But it is very, very clearly mentioned in Skand Puran that Ayodhya is located on the banks of river Saryu, 1 yojan east of Swargdar, 1 yojan west of it, till the point where it merges with another river called Tilodaki. So the Sangam of Tilodaki and Saryu at one end, and Sangam of or confluence of Saryu and Gharghara at another end. So by these rivers, this boundary of Ayodhya is very, very clearly defined. The southern bank is Saryu, and north of Saryu is the Ayodhya, and its dimensions are very, very clearly defined. These are some of the ghats. The picture you see on the top is the Saryu Aarti that probably has been started recently, but all the 3 times I have been there, I've seen this Aarti. I've in fact performed this Aarti. It is pretty much done on the lines of Ganga Aarti in Banaras, and it's beautiful. On the right, what you see is Ram Ki Paidi. It's a very popular place for taking bath. It's a small video of Ayodhya. It's a video of Saryu River from Guptar Ghat till Ayodhya. So just a 2-minute video. So you see a lot of sandbanks in between the river. It's a fairly vast river. I'll tell you the story of Guptar Ghat after we finish this. So there's a lot of Shraddh that is done. So you can see a lot of these post-life rituals are being done here. That's how the city of Ayodhya looks from Saryu. That's a huge bridge that crosses. That's Ayodhya skyline as of now. It has very colorful streets, houses are very colorful. This is Ayodhya Shodh Sansthan, which has complete documentation of everything to do with Rama and Ramayana. That's Saryu Aarti for you. So this is Guptar Ghat, from where we started the boat journey. Guptar Ghat is the place from where Sri Ram left earth, or left Ayodhya, when his work was done on earth. So it is said that when he left, when he decided to leave his body, or when he decided to go back to Swarg, he was having a conversation with Kal, which is the god of time. He came down to Ayodhya, and he and Sri Ram were in a conversation about his time of departure. And Sri Ram had given clear instructions to Lakshman that nobody should enter the room where discussions were taking place. But as it always happens, Rishi Durvasa walked in and he said, I have to see Ram now. And Lakshman had to allow him to go in. Now, Sri Ram satisfied Rishi Durvasa, but he gave up Lakshman. He punished Lakshman by saying, "मैं तुम्हारा त्याग करता हूँ, I give you up." And Lakshman there and then decided to leave his body. So where he left, Lakshman, as we know, is the avatar of Sheshnag. So the place where he took bath in Saryu, and where he left his body, or where the Sheshnag appeared to take him back, or to take him back into their world, is called Sahastradhara, because it is said Sahastra means thousands, and thousands of the hoods of the Nagas came out to take Lakshman. That is one of the most important Tirth Sthalas of Ayodhya, Sahastradhara. After Lakshman left, when Sri Ram decided to leave, he started walking towards the Saryu. This is the place where he came, and this is the place where he was accompanied by everybody in Ayodhya, be it a human being, every living being, it is said, in Ayodhya accompanied him, and they entered Saryu with him. And because they entered Saryu with him, they also reached Swarga with him. So this place is important from that perspective, and it is slightly away from the city. So this place is called Gopratar Tirth. The distorted name is Guptar Ghat. Sahastradhara is an important Tirth Sthala. Swargdwar is another Tirth Sthala which is important. Swarnkhani, I've already told you the story of the gold mine that Raghu and Kuber's story. Then there are a lot of kunds. Now, when I studied Skand Puran for the first time, and I was making a list of places to see, I had a list of about 55 ponds. And imagine, this is a city which is located on the banks of a perennial river, which is always flowing. And right next to it, there is a list of 55 ponds of different kinds, and each pond has a story. So if there is a pond called Brihaspati Kund, so there is a story associated with Brihaspati, the guru of Devtas, and it is also associated with astrologically, if your Brihaspati is weak, then you're supposed to go and have a bath there. There is a story associated with Rukmini saying that when she had visited here, she excavated this kund, and it has become famous with her name. Similarly, Brahma came here and excavated a kund. Sita herself excavated, a kund was made for Sita. There is a kund for Rati and Kamadev, where, couples are supposed to have bath together, and then they become like Rati and Kamadev. There is a Yogini Kund where the followers of the Yogini Vidyas, or Mahavidyas, they take bath. I've listed some of them. There is a long list of ponds that Ayodhya has, and each pond has a story. associated, a Puranic story associated with the person on whose name the pond is. There is a tithi associated, a date associated on which there is an annual pilgrimage date of to visit and take bath there. Taking bath remains the biggest ritual that you can do on the Tirth Yatra. But doing charity, giving dan, performing certain pujas at places, it's recommended that you stay awake the whole night, which is called jagran, which means you stay awake and keep worshipping through the night. So there are a lot of rituals associated with each of them that are mentioned in Skanda Puran. Now let me walk you through some of the temples of Ayodhya, important temples. The most important temple is, of course, Ram Janmabhoomi temple, and the picture on the right is the Ram Lala's picture that was circulated on the day of the Bhumi Pujan. And on the left is the Murti of Sri Ram, Sita, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughan, which is in a temple called Kale Ram temple right now, but it was probably a part of the old Ram Janmabhoomi temple. Then the second most important temple and the most popular famous temple is Hanuman Gadhi temple, which is located on a hilltop, and which is where on the Bhumi Pujan day the Prime Minister also had visited. Now this is an ancient temple. It is said that when Sri Ram was leaving the earth, he told Hanuman to take care of Ayodhya, and he's still standing there and taking care of Ayodhya. It's a belief. It's on a hilltop, and you will see a lot of monkeys on these temples, and you get a beautiful view of Ayodhya because it's on a height. When you are and you can go on the roof of this temple. When you stand on the roof of this temple, you get a beautiful view of this temple. It's a Hanuman temple, and you get to see a lot of monkeys and a lot of kirtan. This is a temple called Kanak Bhavan temple. This is not really a temple, it's a bhavan. Bhavan means a palace or a place of residence. Now, it is said that this was the palace of Sita. And this was the palace that Kaikeyi gifted Sita when she got married in Muh Dikhai. It's a ritual when the bride comes in and the mother-in-law gives her something when she sees the bride for the first time. So when Kaikeyi first saw Sita, she gave her this palace, and Kanak Bhavan literally means golden palace. This is one of the most alive temples in Ayodhya as of now. There's the Murti of Ram Sita look like this. The interesting part in this temple is that there is a plaque which lists the renovations of this temple right from Treta Yuga till today. So we know that, of course, the structure that we see today cannot be more than 500 years old or 600 years old. But there is a mention of all the renovations that have taken place, or the people who have contributed to the renovations since this temple has existed. So I find that very interesting about this temple. And also this temple has something called Kanak Rasoi, because it is Sita's palace. There is Sita Rasoi where you can eat food. There is a small restaurant-like place where you can get the temple food as prasad and eat. The temple on the left is called Badasthan. It is supposed to be the darbar of Dashrath. So this is supposed to be the place where Dashrath used to have his darbar, his court. On the right is a temple called Nageshwar Nath. It's a Shiva temple. They don't allow you to take the picture of the deity. So I've taken the picture of the carvings, and it's one of the most beautifully carved temples in Ayodhya. This is the temple. This is the royal temple, current royal temple in the current royal premises of Ayodhya. So what you see on the right is the temple as it looks from outside, and what you see on the left is the temple interiors. It's a Shiva temple. It's called Darshaneshwar Mahadev temple. And what intrigues me is the beautiful paintings, very colorful, very strong paintings all around the temple. temples of Ayodhya have a very, very interesting tradition. They sing the Ram Dhun continuously. They sing it continuously 24/7 non-stop. And not one temple, not two temples, many temples do that. So I would say take 1 minute and look at these. This is how anybody can join. This is just streets of Ayodhya. You can be walking and listening to music. This is the works Karyashala. So this is a unique tradition that I have found only in Ayodhya. I don't recall seeing it anywhere, and in Ayodhya I saw it in so many temples, some of which I could record. The temple on the left is Badi Dev Kali temple. She's the Kul Devi of Sri Ram and the Surya Vansh. And there are two Dev Kali temples. One is called Badi Dev Kali and one is called Choti Dev Kali. It is believed that the Choti Dev Kali is the Kul Devi of Sita Mata, and she brought her along with her when she came to Ayodhya. The temple on the right is actually Chhauni. So Chhaunis are how ashrams are called in Ayodhya. So most of the big ashrams are called Chhaunis. The temple on the left, it's the wall of the temple. It's the Valmiki temple, and the whole of Valmiki Ramayana is engraved on the walls. All the 24,000 shlokas are written on the walls of this temple, and it's probably one of the biggest temples as of now in Ayodhya. Temple on the right is it's the same temple. On top of it, you have something called a Sitaram Naam Bank, where they give you, anybody who goes there is given a booklet on which you can do the Lekhan Jap, which is writing the name of Sri Ram, and then you are supposed to deposit it back to them, and then they dispose them off ritually. This is a painting that depicts the Milan of Hanuman and Bharat. Now we know that when Sri Ram was away for 14 years, Ayodhya was taken care of by Bharat. But Bharat did not stay in the city of Ayodhya. He stayed outside the city limits in a place called Nandigram, and where he made a small kuti for himself, or a small hut for himself, and he lived in that hut, and he let the khadaun, or the footwear of Sri Ram, to rule. And while he was living there, he met Hanuman twice. Once when Hanuman was going to fetch the Sanjeevani Booty, and second time when Hanuman came as a messenger to tell Bharat that Sri Ram is on his way back to Ayodhya. And both the times, the Hanuman Bharat Milap is very, very fondly remembered in the temples at Nandigram. On the left is the Raj Mahal of Ayodhya, and on the right I've shown one of the ponds. Like I said, there are 50 plus ponds in Ayodhya. This is one of the ponds. On the left is some of the Kaushalya and Sri Ram, and some of the style of making murtis in Ayodhya. On the right, what you see is a marker stone. And these are some of the marker stones. And whole of Ayodhya, there are these marker stones which will tell you about the place, the month and the time when the annual pilgrimage takes place, and the name of the place. And you'll find 100 plus of such markers. These were probably put in place by the British. There is a tradition of writing Sitaram, Ram Ram everywhere. So when a Bilva Patra is offered to Shivji in any of the Shiva temples, it is also offered after Ram Ram or Sita Ram is written on it. These are some of the unique things I found in Ayodhya. On the right, you see the dhobi. They still wash clothes in the ponds like this. And when I saw dhobi, it reminds you of an episode from Ramayana. Ayodhya is a place where a lot of karma kand is done, where a lot of shraddh are done, a lot of pitri rituals are done, and you'll often see people coming there to do a lot of rituals for their ancestors. On the right, what you see is a gharonda. If you've heard Hindi songs and if you've heard the word gharonde banana, then this is how the gharonda looks like. It's made around Diwali time by children mostly. I'll skip this in the interest of time. This is Tulsidas. We know that Tulsidas ji wrote Ramayana. So the Ayodhya Shodh Sansthan is located in a place called Tulsi Samaran Bhavan, and it has a beautiful collection of art forms from around the world that depict Ramayana or Ram in any form. The walls are, as you enter the place, the walls are painted with the whole Ramayana story, and interestingly, it is painted in a way that it depicts the painting style of the place. So if it's the Ram Janki wedding that is depicted, it is depicted in Mithila style. If it is the jungles of Dandakaranya, it is painted in that style. So that's very interesting, and it of course has a whole lot of literature that they have published on Ramayana, a lot of research work. I'll briefly touch upon this. The temple on the left is Rishabh Dev Ji of the first Jain Tirthankar, or Adinath as he is called. Now, he and 22 other Jain Tirthankars also trace their lineage to the same Surya Vansh as Sri Ram, and 5 of them were born in Ayodhya. Although I saw only one temple dedicated to Adinath Ji, but it's a huge temple. Buddhism also flourished. Again, Sakyamuni Buddha or Gautam Buddha also traces his lineage to the same Surya Vansh. There are only mounds that are left now. One of them is Mani Parvat, which you can see and which you can go on top of. But there are not too many remains of Buddhist era left. Maybe there are excavated items which I am yet to see. These are, there is a long documentation of the journey of Sri Ram from Ayodhya to Sri Lanka and back. His khadaun are still worshipped. Lot of ashrams in Ayodhya, and you will still see yagnas being done. I'll skip this story in the interest of time. I'm done with my time. I'll just take you through some cuisines of Ayodhya. So the thali you see is what you get at the Kanak Bhavan. I told you you can get the prasad as a thali and eat it. And so this is how the thali looks like. Very simple food made without onion, garlic, anything. Very simple, very homely, very neat, clean, blessed food. What you see on right is something that's called dana. If you've been to Purvanchal or Eastern UP, Bihar, this is the most healthiest, most easy to get basic snack that you can get. It's just roasted grains with your choicest chutney customized to your taste. You'll find it anywhere. Litti chokha, those of you know, and then chai in these kulhars, the clay cups. This is a typical food that you get in the streets of Ayodhya. Let me end this with something sweet. So in Ayodhya, they eat jalebi with dahi. So dahi jalebi is something that you must have as and when you go to Ayodhya. On the right, what you see is the laddus being made for Hanuman Gadi temple. These are the yellow laddus that are offered to Hanuman and offered to a lot of monkeys who continue to live there. And that's with that, I will end it. And these are the books that Sameer ji spoke about, Unusual Temples of India or Bharat Ke Anokhe Mandir. They are available online, and please do read them and share your feedback. It helps us bring you more books to you. These are my contact details.